deeper into my study on what the future holds for all of us and what we can do to be future ready, I'm delighted to have with us Quasar Thakore Padamese, an Indian stage actor turned theatre director. Quasar studied English literature at St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. Though he started his career following his father as an ad man, he soon switched to full-time theatre by starting Mumbai-based theatre company called QTP. And since 1999, he has directed and produced over 25 plays with his theatre company. He's also a founding member of FESPO, a youth theatre movement. So our conversation with him today is going to span literature, events, and of course, theatre, his primary love. Quasar, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you so much for helping us shape the narrative on the future of work.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm quite excited.
Okay, terrific. All right. So, Quasar, as we started thinking about this book, and people said, "Why are you writing a book on the future?" People say, "Live in the now, live in the moment," and we said, "No, we want to talk about the future." So, from your vantage point as someone in the theatre space, why think about the future? Why is it important? Do you guys keep your pulse on the future?
I think all of us need to keep an eye on what is coming, because I think the cycle of how things have changed has been completely broken. Right? Earlier on, change was a much slower kind of process. In fact, one of the things that we do within the art, I mean, the theater is the oldest art form ever, right? Ever since someone went and killed a woolly mammoth and came back to the cave and tried to enact what happened, the first performer was born. So
it's outlived everything. It's outlived technology. It's outlived all the revolutions.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Because storytelling is such a human impulse, right? You want to share things. We're a communal kind of people. It's all about community, and it's all about trying to share with other people. And in an interesting way, over the years, theatre's always had to contend with technological revolutions, right? The invention of gaslight into suddenly night performances became possible. The invention of electrical light, suddenly, things changed. And that's constantly been the way. Then acoustic sound, speaker systems, all of that. But all these changes have been slow. They've taken time. Projections, for example, only came about in the 50s or 60s. And all these things have taken time, and playwrights have had time to spend with that and then respond to what happens. Today's day and age, the change is much quicker. I mean, it's one of the things I was talking to someone recently, and I was saying, so many plays now are more dated than they've ever been. From a human point of view, they're not dated. They're still human emotions, they're still important. But all of a sudden, there are plays that no longer make sense.
Like from a socio-cultural perspective?
Well, from a technological perspective, right? Okay. Just purely. I mean, if you think about, let's do a production of Romeo and Juliet, right? Let's do a modernized version of Romeo and Juliet. How do you do that? Because the whole premise of the play is the fact that a message didn't receive. One guy went to give the message and he wasn't there, and that's the whole crux of the
play.
Fact. Yeah. And therefore she kills him. She fakes her death. He doesn't know about it. He kills himself. She wakes up. All the power of that is now gone, because there will be one SMS saying, "Listen, dude, I'm going to fake my death," or
Yeah.
So what I mean.
And you have a generation that won't be able to relate to this kind of storytelling.
Partly of that. So suddenly it does become dated. You can't update these narratives in the same way. And something that we've been coming across is a lot of kids and a lot of people. When I say kids, I mean, young,
audiences,
in their 20s and all. Creators are now no longer going back to bookshelves and picking off plays to do. They are genuinely looking at writing their work, because their experience now is very, very different. Their lived experience is different to that. And again, I don't just mean socio-cultural. All the stuff that is society-based and cultural-based, the problems with generations, the problems with religion, the problems with the way women are treated, all those remain. They are universal, and they have been universal, unfortunately, for hundreds of years, right? Just at different levels of that. But now the way those narratives flow, how that experience flows, is completely different.
Okay, wow, okay. So from your perspective as someone who's creating these plays and producing them, you're saying you really need to keep a pulse on sort of what's coming, what are these audiences now going to be exposed to in the coming years? So you start writing, thinking, producing from that perspective.
So yeah, there are the three or four things. So one is what is the lived reality now, right? And how is it different? So from an artist point of view, what am I reflecting? What is happening around me? And therefore how am I presenting that? Um like right now the science fiction earlier on was something that you could be imaginative about, and then in 20 or 30 or even 50 years something started looking very, I mean, I remember this was a bizarre thing, maybe in the early 2000s, right? Someone did a talk on all the science fiction books that had happened, in the 60s and 70s, and they talked about, great civilizations, and talked about space travel and all, and Star Trek and Star Wars, and it was just kind of like a stand-up comedy thing. It's just all we've got is like sliding doors, you know.
Mm.
Today you can't say that anymore because we have gone well, but we are in Terminator 2 territory, right? Skynet is real. AI has taken over everything. It's doing a lot of stuff. There are glitches, there are problems. Alexa is listening to everything. Our phones are listening to everything. We are in all that. Science fiction has suddenly become science fact.
Yeah, Frankenstein, it's all there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now we don't know where. Now, what is the next stage? We don't know where it's going. How is it going? What is it going to? And some of it, of course, we have willfully been we've given up our autonomy and our privacy for this. We've done it. So from a creator's point of view, what is that? And from an audience point of view, what is it that they are seeing? Because narratives on how we present are also dependent on how an audience receives it, right? There's a playwright called Ram Ganesh, and he said something very interesting. And this was about 2008, 2009, when we were working on a project, on a play together. And I was saying, oh, you know what? We're competing with films, and, like theaters competing with films from a visual identity point and how we do it and this and that. And he said, theater's not competing with film. He said, we are all competing with video games. He said, video games are what is really determining what the visual narrative is. And if you look at how sports coverage has changed in the last even 5 or 10 years, right? Things that used to be possible on a video game, right? Because in a video game, your camera can be above the cricket batsman. In your video game, it can be a 360 camera around a footballer, right? Which earlier on could not exist. But because people had got used to watching that on video games, suddenly the broadcasters had to go, oh my God, we have to now change. And they started figuring out this spider cam and, all of this in order to achieve what a video game was achieved. And that's just a simple example. But I'm saying within narrative, within the way things happen. So today, for example, this concept of the 15-second, attention span window, right? Which is you watch something, it has to be 15 seconds, you swipe and you swipe and you swipe and you swipe. That's another challenge that has been thrown down to the theater fraternity, particularly, and the creators of work. So how do you engage people for longer than that? Or how do you manage to capture that zeitgeist in that smaller span of time? And yet not
it's interesting you bring that up, because however, when I pose the same question to people who make full-length features, they said, look, people still go into the theaters and they do watch. So honestly, it's the quality of the content you're putting out.
Well, it's a mix and match, right? So for example, I would say, if you look at the plethora of action films that have come out, right? And they're visual spectacles, and they're very, very powerful, but they all can actually be nuggetized a little bit. So there is an influence that is happening in the way narratives are unfolding. I am still very much of the old school, and I like to sit down and watch, Killers of the Flower Moon for 3.5 hours. But I'm rare, when I'm not necessarily the audience of the future. But then within that, like, what would be the things? The other thing that's really interesting is also how we consume stuff, right? So now, for example, I've got a list of films that I've made, like a list of films that I want to watch. And I've only watched a scene or a half a scene or something on a 15-second reel.
Yeah.
And I've been like, oh, that's interesting. And I've written it down saying, I hope I I can catch it or whatever, and I'll start looking for it and do stuff like that. So there's also the way the gateway has changed, right? The gateway is no longer just a trailer. The gateway is actually now the product itself. That is asking us to or exciting us about it. And in that way, for example, with regards to cinema, theater is very different because what we then offer, I mean, there's a lovely uh, thing like we just talked about that theater is the oldest profession in the world, but theater is the only profession in the world that has for its entire life been dying but hasn't died.
Hasn't died yet. Yes, it's also like the radio, right?
Yeah. No, when
yeah,
similar. So when radio turned up, then everyone had, oh, theater's done. When cinema turned up, everyone said theater's done. When animation turned up, everyone said, oh my God, theater's definitely done. When stand-up comedy turned up, when Instagram has turned up, so we've considered. But the wonderful thing about the theater is it evolves, and so far, at least, its innateness actually is now its what is its intrinsic value is now its absolute USP. That's what makes it unique in the fact that it is live. It is a shared experience between actor and audience and performers and audience. And you live here and breathe the whole communication in a very, very different way. And I think that
so it has its salient features, which is essentially the human experience. You're physically there.
It is physically human. And I think more and more theater work is now moving in that direction to absolutely capture that human experience.
But what about this recorded theater? NCPA screens, and it kind of goes back to your comment on these cameras that can capture these unique angles.
Yeah.
I went to see something at the NCPA where they had this video thing because obviously I could.
NT Live, yeah.
Yeah, NT Live, exactly.
That's right, yeah.
And they had one of these plays from London being screened here. It was great. I couldn't be in London at that time. I get to see something 2 minutes away from where I am.
Yeah.
And because of these camera angles, even if I had the best seats in London, I probably wouldn't be able to see this play with this level of acute comfort and this level of acute capture. Because they're literally like cameras rotating around every scene, and I'm like, oh wow, I can actually see their back and the sides and everything. It was phenomenal. Would I want to do this over going and catching that play in London? Probably not. But given that option, given that people are becoming more visual, it's. I mean, honestly, when I came out, I had mixed feelings because
it's a mixed bag. So one is it has to be captured correctly, right? In fact, the capturing of NT Live, particularly compared to any of the other cine plays that have happened, which are just kind of a run through that is being shot by 3 cameras or 4 cameras. Like I think NT Live uses about 17 cameras, and the camera crew attends rehearsal and then they watch it. It's captured more like a sporting event than it is a theater event in that way, right? And there's great connection with the director about what points need to be highlighted at various points. Having said that, right? Like for example, the best example or the most popular example is in the lockdown they released Hamilton on Disney Hotstar, right? And it got a lot of people, including myself, who haven't seen the stage production, but I know the music backwards and I've heard it on Spotify and I love it and whatever. I was able to visually see it, and it, and then I watched it back to back for about 3 times because I love it. Even that, right, as an actual live experience is much better because the scope of what you can catch when the way the human brain works, right, is much larger than what you catch only when the camera focuses, right? So when you're looking at something that's 50 feet across, even though you're asked to focus on the 2 central characters, the brain actually does process all the other stuff that's going around, and it adds to the mise-en-scène. One of the problems, so for example, when I work on a play, I keep asking actors to print out their scripts and not to refer to it on a tablet or whatever. It really bugs me. And the reason is because when you hold an entire script, there is a past, a present, there's a where you are, which is the present, there's a past, which is what you've read up till now, and there is a future. When you're looking at a screen, those other things don't exist. You are only in that moment, right? And it's also the same reason why me as an old person or an older reader, I prefer reading a book than reading it on a
Kindle.
Kindle. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But in the same way, a screen gives you that much. It doesn't give you the past and doesn't give you the other elements that are wider, which a piece of theater does. But the other thing which I will say is where what is happening interestingly with writing now and with writing in the future
Mhm.
is playwrights are now challenging themselves to say, okay, how do I make sure an audience can only watch this in the theater?
Can
So
only
therefore,
watch it in the theater. Oh, really?
so therefore the
Ah,
experience
okay.
suddenly changes. So there's a play, for example, called Every Brilliant Thing, which is incredibly audience participative, right? And every show is completely different because the audience is completely different. There's a playwright called Naseem Sulaimanpur, whose plays an actor can only perform once,
Wow.
and they should not have seen the text before. They get handed the text on stage, right?
Okay.
Now these things, you come to witness something. You come to witness something that will never be there again. It will disappear, right? Once that's gone, and that same transient quality, right, is what makes now the theater so special.
Okay.
Again,
You're seeing this happen a lot?
oh yeah. So a lot of playwrights are now responding to that internationally and a little bit within India as well. Trying to figure out how do they, and so are directors and so are people, to say how, if we want to engage an audience, how do we engage them? How do we make sure that our experience is a unique experience? Because along with this burst of social media and this burst of what happened in the lockdown where everyone was sitting on their phones and consuming stuff, the counter is that now people do want more experience.
Okay.
They want stuff that is more experiential, right? So that explains why across the world, there are newer kinds of experiences being pitched, whether they're
You're seeing it with art also, right? With the Van
with
Gogh
art,
exhibits.
with everything, right? So it's the same thing, and I think the theater's in that zone. I still don't know what the future holds. We don't we The interesting about the theater's always been caught between two stools, right? On the one hand, it's an art. On the other hand, it requires an audience. So it can also be commercial.
It is an
Right?
entertainment angle.
Yeah. So it's entertainment or is it art? What is the space? So some work is artistically very strong and also very successful. And then other work will be artistically very strong, which means it's playing to a smaller people, which may be its strength. If you create a really intense experience for 20, 30 people, that's why it will survive, because those 30 people will have a real connection with it. It is also one of the few one is to many experiences left, because all our digital stuff, anything that is on a screen, whether it's a big screen or a small screen or whatever, is now trying to be 1:1. Right? So even if you go to the cinema and you look at the seats in the cinema, right? They're big, they're chunky. There's a division even between you and the date you're with. If you try and you've got to go across like a table to hold her hand or whatever, vice versa.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to shut everyone else out. So it's just you and the experience. In the theater, it's the exact opposite. You are part of a larger audience. You're part of a community audience, and in fact, that's almost more important.
Okay, so you're saying that they are trying to, there is going to be a shift towards a more audience interactive, more participatory phenomena coming
and I
through.
think also within the stagings. So I think we're going to see more and more things that are either in the round or in promenade. We're not going to see actors here and audience there as much anymore. We're going to see
fluid spaces,
more and more stuff. Promenade shows where people move from place to place. Audience. I think that's going to become more and more the norm.
Okay. You had touched on a very interesting point about essentially the user base shifting, right? People are they consume differently, they think differently, they got up in a different digital era. When I grew up, the conversation was between men and women, and that was a gender diversity conversation. Gender diversity between men and women, the young generation, they're like, what are you talking about? It's not about men and women anymore, right? There's a different gender equation going on. So obviously there is a massive shift. How do you see theater responding? Are you seeing that shift coming through in the new scripts you're writing, in the scripts you're reading? Is there a shift?
So there is quite a strong shift. So one of the things that is lovely about the theater, and I mean this, across time, is that because the theater is only trying to play to maybe 800 or 1,000 people at a time, unlike a film which is trying to play to millions of people at the same time, right? Is therefore it allows for more experimentation both in form and in content, right? So if you look at the question of homosexuality in America particularly, right? Um, the representation of that began with a play called Angels in America, you know,
Okay.
and then only and it became such a seminal hit. It was a sleeper, small little show that just kind of had legs, and it was about the AIDS crisis in the 80s, and it brought to the forefront the humanity of things. Suddenly, everyone woke up and said, "Oh shit, we've been pigeonholing these people. It's wrong. It's this that," and then things have moved in a different direction. So the theater lends itself to experiences like that, partly because its commercial occupations are not as big as other art forms or other entertainment forms.
Okay.
So
Except when you got the Broadway shows coming in, right? Then you're talking big money.
you're talking big money, but I'm saying it's the same thing, right? Like so. I mean, for example, Hamilton is a show about white people, but told by black people,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
told by
Yeah.
people of color, and
Yeah.
therefore it is unique, and it's told in their language, in their
Yeah.
tribe. I mean, I say use the word tribal language because it's their own kind of,
With the
hip hop
rapping
is
and
there, yeah. Hip
yeah,
hop
yeah.
is their lingua franca. We
Yeah,
can
yeah.
and therefore it's captured a zeitgeist. Suddenly people have gone, oh, it's okay to retell history in this way, you know, and also acknowledge all the various things and make it cool and make it fun and make it interesting, right? And yes, certain license is taken and certain things are taken, but it changes up what the entire experience was. And that's still a massive Broadway hit, right? It's one of the biggest grossing shows of all time.
And to your point about keeping up with sort of social cultural trends, this play is doing well now because it's well received in the last, it's 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe this production 50 years ago would not have gone down as well.
Yeah, it would probably not have gone on. I mean, if you think about his other show, which is Into the Heights, which follows the same kind of whatever, it wasn't that well received. It was a minor hit, but it wasn't as well received as Hamilton. And that's just the nature of how things
Are moving.
are moving. But what I'm saying is that the theater allows for that mix and match. So suddenly you can end up with a show like I mean, like even if you look at Wicked, all right, Wicked at its very base, right, is actually talking about some level of racism, right? This girl was green, and that's why everyone judged her.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. So the humanity that the theater allows to come in, is quite. So I mean, I completely understand everyone sitting in a room and workshopping this idea and seeing where it goes and tacking it to the misunderstood witch, and then everything from that.
Okay.
And I think that the theater allows that. So even now, as we talk about other experiences, we talk about mental health, or we talk about gender diversity, and representation and all of that. It's all part and parcel of. I think the theater will always be the place where will be
So testing
the
ground
pebble in the lake. It'll and then the waves will get bigger.
Okay, so you're saying it caters to smaller audiences, therefore alive for some level of experimentation.
Yes.
You also talk about how theatre has taken on new technology, new advancements, and sort of incorporated them to always be sort of a beneficiary of this. You've spoken about fluid spaces where the distance between the audience and the actors will sort of start to diminish. And you talked about interactive performances where you will now see the audience play some sort of role so that the theatre. Okay, great.
So I think more than interactive, we're trying to create unrecreatable performances where every performance, every night is a unique experience. So it's not a templated kind of thing anymore. And for that, what is new will always be the audience, right? So therefore, there's more interactivity within that. That's where we are right now. I don't know where we will end up.
Okay, great. Okay, since we talked about storytelling, what is going on with AI in the theatre space? What's the chatter around AI? Are people worried, scared, don't care? the strike in Hollywood happened.
Yeah.
What is going on in the theater fraternity, and what's your personal take on
So-
AI in theater?
All right. So particularly in India, I think it's at this stage very much a writer's nightmare,
It is a writer's night.
right?
Okay.
Because we
Okay.
don't know where it's going to go, right? It's self-learning. So we don't know where it's going to end up. And it seems to be a better borrower of stuff than any human being has ever been, right? I think Tarsem said this about advertising. He said there's nothing as original, it's just how well you hide your sources, how well you hide the source material. So now that AI is taking over, we don't know how well it will generate, and currently it's pretty damn good, especially for people who aren't erudite, and right now it's being used as a tool for research and for writing emails and
Social media
all of that.
posts, all of it.
Yeah. The challenge is from the theater point of view is obviously for the writers. There is the challenge also so far because actors need to still be actors, right? Unlike with film, where now with deep fakes and all of that, you can get any actor to do anything, and it can be, and the CGI level is so strong that you don't really notice it, that it's not a human being. I mean, take that whole what is it, Mowgli and
Sure.
Jungle Book. I mean, every bristle on that tiger's mane, moves.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On the
So in theater, of course, those sort of shenanigans don't work.
So far, at least we don't have that problem. So far. Again, I still don't know where we're going to go with it. But from the writing point of view, there is worry that jobs will go. I'll be honest and say already within the corporate space, like for example, I also write corporate films and stuff like that. That now there's nothing that stops a client from putting stuff together and saying, okay, this is the film. Invariably, when those have happened, they've been very dry and boring films.
Sure.
So then there's a qualitative element that is there. But honestly, 9 times out of 10, they're just worried about the information, not about the quality of the work. So for example, in an absolutely strange way, it means it has affected my theater because that's what I do to make a living. Right? And that's what I then pour into the theater.
Sure.
So it has affected how we work and how we.
But are they able to actually put together a corporate film literally from scene 1 to scene 47?
So at least from the script point of view, yes.
Yes.
Right. Because and corporate films are usually 4 or 5 minute tours. They're not very massive, and it's about a voiceover, and then you'll have a talking head talk about something and whatever. And it seems, this is my experience of it. It seems that people are now feeding it into a ChatGPT first before they bring it out, before they really need a writer to come on board, right? So the simple stuff now is getting what they call simple, but what they miss or what they lose is the larger pictures that are not in the prompts, right? Because you also have to think about what are the prompts that happen. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, are writers using ChatGPT now to develop? And maybe they are. Maybe it allows them to be free creatively because they're not worried about every word going one in front of the other. I don't know. I fear, because one of my big things within the arts world, and particularly within the theater, and whether it's theater or writing or whatever, is the point of the arts is to constantly reinvent, right, and find newer things. And the moment a majority of the people are not in that search anymore, and they're only trying to rehash what already exists, I worry that then we are curtailing where the human imagination can go. And for me, that artistically, forget about what the scientists are doing. That's a different world completely. But artistically, I worry about.
But don't you see it as an aid? Do you have you tinkered around with it? Do you see it as an aid? If you put in a certain sort of character you have in mind or a certain plot line, and then say, hey, GPT, where would you take these 3 friends on a Friday night in Milan or whatever? I don't know. Have you played with it to see like?
So we have tried a little bit. I have I will also be honest and say that I'm so reticent about it because
Ah.
it's it's like it's the bad habit, man. It's like the guy who invented the infinite scroll on Instagram and now he regrets inventing. I don't really like watching thing video on. I like reading on my phone. I don't like watching stuff on my phone.
Mm.
But I watch a lot of crap
Yeah.
just because it's there, right? We can't help ourselves. Sometimes the ease is so. I'm trying to keep the AI stuff an arm's length away. I do believe I am a unique individual, and I do believe that I think uniquely in a way. Maybe I'm very naive about that, right? But that's what I feel. So I'm also very like reticent to dive into the chat GPT world,
Okay.
or the AI world in that way. And in fact, even when so obviously the big challenge is now that we are hiring people, from a thing, and you ask someone, for writing competency tests and stuff, and it's chat GPT that comes out. And at least at this stage, we can tell it is because it's cold. It's not. It doesn't have a
Yeah.
real human flavor. Now, what is the problem with that later? The problem later is that when there is a human response that is required, right, that person actually doesn't have the skill to do that because they're not actually. I mean, that's my fear because we live in a very. I mean, I work in a very human environment, right? Everything is about people and communicating and bringing people on stage, whether it's with the literature festival, whether it's with uh, the theater, and then interacting with a live audience.
So you like this the human connect.
Yeah,
It seems to be sort of flowing through everything you're saying.
yeah.
So ChatGPT AI for you, at least as of now, not really. It looks like you haven't really sort of moved
So
in that
I haven't
direction
personally, I
personally.
haven't dived into it, but there are writers who have. There are people who are looking at that to say, hey, is there a fix there that we can then use it? And
Okay.
my
So
challenge
since
is how do you keep it at arm's length?
okay, fine. For you, it's just okay. I think that's you explained it very well. Since we're on the topic of AI, and then we can stop talking about AI because we don't have to talk about too much. But since you run the literature festival, you had a fabulous session in this year's literature festival with
Yeah.
Shashi Tharoor and Professor Marcus, I believe he's from Oxford.
Yes,
And
Marcus Musota. Yeah.
and it was a fabulous conversation. I was sitting in the audience, and they had polar views on AI, with the Tharoor obviously saying that, look, AI is not going to be able to replicate the kind of books I write, blah, blah, blah. And Professor Marcus saying, well, it's good, it's smarter than you think it is, and it's continually being trained. So where are you on this spectrum? What do you think is going to happen? Are you going to see AI models start, if not necessarily completely replacing human authors, but will we have a genre of AI written novels, and do you see that as the future?
So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that will happen. Again, I come back to the fact where is it an artistic expression? Is it a commercial expression, right? Or an entertainment expression? Now, the moment something is commercial and entertainment, right? AI will ace that because
It'll ace it. Okay.
will ace it. I'm saying they will
Okay.
absolutely they will nail it perfectly because they are mining data from what people want, what people like. It's like the algorithms right now, right? I mean, the simplest example is whatever the 2019 election or the 2014 election, right? All of us who have our own Facebook feeds, who are anti-BJP in that sense, were surprised by how, the elections, how one-sided the elections turned, right?
Sure.
Because in all our feeds, we are being fed only stuff that we like.
Sure. Of course.
So suddenly we are only being told one side of the narrative, right? So when the
Sure.
reality happens, it's like, what the hell happens?
Yeah, because you're
What I
living in a
mean,
little bubble created
in a
by
little
this.
bubble, right? And that's the same thing. So people are going to like what they like, and then the algorithms are going to then take that,
Feed
and
them
then
what
the
they.
AI will then generate that, and in that shape, more and more and more and more, and keep refining. Because then um, it's only about because all of it builds around if the AI generates it, I will pay for it. If I because I will like it, etc., 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 and then that's how you build your mass. From an artistic point of view, right? The artistic success of something is actually much longer, right? Van Gogh was broke his whole life. It took us a long time to appreciate, man, this guy was really something, right? and now it's priceless what we have. So my from an artistic point of view, the whole point is that an AI will only generate what is already popular. But what is going to be next popular or what is not going to be popular, but still have merit because it's talking about certain things or feelings or whatever, is on the other side of it, right? Now, currently, with the way that AI works, it's a populist medium, right? It's all about numbers, it's all about power. But the human beings are not a populist medium, right? Otherwise, we just have
But
genocide. We wouldn't have reservations. We
to
wouldn't
play
have,
devil's advocate, two
yeah,
things from what you said. One is, so from what you're explaining to me, and you're saying for youth, theater is an artistic expression, not so much a commercial one. But for many writers, writing is their art form as well as their commercial endeavor, right? They make money off of the books
absolutely,
they
yeah.
sell. So there is a little bit of a
So
fine
that's
line there
so
for them.
so that's where I'm coming at. I think your let's say your I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but your airport novel, right? Your easy
Sure.
bestsellers. I think AI will generate a lot of those and a lot of very good ones,
Okay.
right? Because there is a very clear mathematics to how that can be tracked.
Hmm.
Because there are tastes that are being logged in. The more people buy, the more that people want it. So you create more stuff like that.
Hmm.
But for me, the challenge is going to be where is that amazing new book? Where is that book that
Okay.
is the outlier? Where is that one book that suddenly people stumble across and go, holy cow, this actually it breaks the
It's like a
paradigm and it shifts.
paradigm.
Yeah, and it
Right.
shifts everything in a different direction.
Okay, that for that you're saying, of course, AI can't replicate
So
because
yeah,
it's not based off of any past
that's
pattern.
yeah. But the problem is that now the way that publishing is going to go, because publishing is also a commercial enterprise, a lot more is going to go in that direction. So these are some of the concerns I think that
Tussles.
that writers will happen. Now, Tharoor, for example, feels that okay, nobody can write like him, and that's quite possible.
Sure.
Except that Marcus then read out that thing that at
Yeah.
least to the lay ear
Yeah. Sounded
sounds
like
like
him.
Tharoor, right?
Yeah, sounded
He
exactly like him.
Well, but he can tell Tharoor can tell it's not him because there are certain things in there that are not really, they're more flowery words than there are
Sure.
actual point, right? But for the lay person, you're like, yeah, okay, Tharoor wrote this book, man, or
Yeah.
it's Tharoor-esque, if
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
do this. But then what is the next one? What are we doing with the next kind of uh, the next writer or the next young writer that's creating something that could be human, could be something.
Also, to be fair, when he read out, it sounded like him because it had sort of big flowery words.
Yeah,
But there was no ideology, right? When I
correct,
read his books and they're all ideologic. There's a
right.
point to his writing. He conveys a very strong argument. He might use that jargon, but it says something. And I don't know
Yeah.
how you're going to get the AI to give out an opinion that is Tharoor's opinion.
So that's the thing, right? If they map it well enough, right? If they map it well enough, if you look at, it's all about parameters, right? Now, for example, I have certain beliefs. The more beliefs that get fed into an AI, and once the AI gets smart enough, the more the AI can predict how I will sound, right? Because then, I mean, basically, that what they're doing is you're building character, right? So we take you for example, and we say, okay, where did she go to school? Where did she go to college? What did she study? What were her favorite subjects? And automatically, it's a being that is being built on that. And then say, okay, now what will she write about?
Sure.
What are the things that she's passionate about? What is her life experience? And then it kind of rolls into that. So again, I'd love to say with some certainty that I don't think AI will replace writers. But I do believe that currently they are a threat. I do believe that one of my challenges or one of my concerns with AI is it has moved so fast in less than a year.
Yeah.
Like ChatGPT is less than a year old and it dominates everything. So
yeah, but I sort of on your like we have people write essays for colleges, right? They have to write their essays, we have them brainstorm them. When they use GPT to send us their first draft, which is like, like it's so easy to tell because it's
But
very sterile. You know?
yeah, but now there are the humanized apps that are also AI. You know what I mean? Like it's still it all keeps kind of writing.
Correct.
So what should have been just a research tool is now a presentation tool. You know, and is now almost substituting the human mind. So the human mind is going, yeah, I don't need to. I'll just put in a bunch of prompts and send that, submit that.
Sure.
But the larger the challenge is that what I feel is that it's happening so fast. We don't actually have time to test whether it's good or not. Now, and I come back to the guy who invented the infinite scroll. He regrets inventing the infinite scroll. You know, he's like, because the infinite scroll is addictive. And he's like, if there's he's like, I invented it, and when we cracked it, it was like, wow, we got that piece of code that can do it. And he's like, I hate the fact that I've done it. He's like, even if it was an infinite scroll, I went to, okay, see more, and I had to make a choice to see more. At that point, the person has a choice to switch off the device. But he's like, just by having that infinite scroll. And for example, he doesn't let his kids use Instagram or anything like that, right? He keeps them away from it because he's realized the damage. So my point is that a lot of these technologies, we aren't really testing them, we're putting them out there, right?
They're not tested, they're not regulated.
So we don't know what impact they're having actually on a population.
Yeah.
On a mental on our mentality, on how we, how we function.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's no regulation, there's no monitoring, there's no tracking of any sort. No government, not even the most developed countries, have any sort of laws around this even. But the truth is that it's all pervasive, right? It's everywhere. It's easily accessible.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are mandating this. They're saying, oh, now in school and university education, you must, and they're doing it all over, right? There's courses on AI. If you go to Coursera, there's like a free course on AI prompt engineering, etc. So, I mean, there's no escaping it. I maybe it's just trying to figure out how best to use it, and if they can quickly put out some regulation around plagiarism. And if you write a book through AI, great, like good for you, you're smart enough to prompt it. Maybe just sort of qualifying that and saying, this book was built or written using AI.
But I mean, that's a lot. I mean, yes, all of us get very antsy about, yes, this book was written using AI, or this book. Realistically, the actual reader doesn't give a crap. Is it a good book? Was it interesting? Did I like it? That's it, right? That's really
what matters.
We will put all these stipulations in place, but within the commercial world, it doesn't really.
The consumer doesn't really
matter.
Care.
Yeah, the consumer doesn't really matter. It doesn't really care.
I did meet a playwright, and she said that she was trying to write something in 15th century, like her thing was set in 15th century England or something.
Yeah.
And she said, I didn't know the dialect or like how they speak. And she said, it's so helpful for me. She said, I wrote this whole thing and dumped it in ChatGPT, and then it rewrote all her dialogue in that Victorian style or whatever the heck. So, there are people who think of this as very helpful. They're using it as an aid as well.
Absolutely. And I don't I don't disagree with its use per se. And what you're saying is a very specific thing, right? How do you convert something from one shape to another, and then you try and figure that out. I do believe that you do lose some nuance. I think the one thing we as a people are, and by that I mean the human race, is the one thing that we have sacrificed is the act of nuance. Right? Everything is very black and white, and the machines are making it less and less.
More and more black and white.
Yeah. What is the gray area? What is really the this thing? And that is becoming much harder. The circumstance is not being taken into account, or whatever. And that's one of the things why I love the theater, right? Because information you can get anyhow, but empathy you cannot. Right? The empathy of a live person standing in front of you, weeping for the loss of their son, saying a line like, "We were brought into they were brought into the world to bury us. We are not supposed to bury them." Is a very, very powerful thing, and it's a human thing, and everyone feels that, and you feel that it's bad, and it teaches us empathy. And we look at it with generosity and curiosity, and we think, wow, the the machine learning unfortunately doesn't teach us, right? And that's where I worry, because then if our playwrights don't infuse the humanity in it, right?
Then where will
Then
it come from?
yeah,
Yeah.
where does it come from?
Of
What do the actors
course.
have to then draw on? And then,
And what does
you know,
society have to draw on
yeah.
then? Okay,
So that,
okay. I like that thought a lot. It's very beautiful. Since you touched upon this communal thing, of course, going to the theater, like the reason I would go see Hamlet in the theater is also
yeah,
because of the experience of watching with this audience, right? Like the cheering and the
yeah,
clapping and the stomping, like that's big. That's
yeah,
that's really like a big part of the experience because you're clapping along with this thundering audience.
yeah,
What do you think in terms of the festival? Since the festival is physical. I know during COVID you took it online.
yeah.
Where are you seeing, this sort of communal get together,
So
communal gatherings move to?
yeah, so I think this is again where I come back to, while everyone is ringing the death knell for everything, right? So online we got 9 million views, right?
Oh, you got 9 million views online.
Yeah, so you can't compete with that, right? I can't put 9 million people in the NCPA campus. It's not
Yeah.
humanly possible. Um, and and so we're never gonna match it on numbers, right? It's just not possible. The structures are different. But when we put people face to face and we put people in that, you really get to listen to the conversation. You get to ask questions. There is a give and take. So I feel that these things like festivals, like if you look at the plethora within the Indian context alone, look at the plethora of different kinds of arts festivals. We've had more in the last now 2 years since lockdown opened than we had ever before,
Film,
right?
music,
Between
all of it,
between
yes.
film festivals, between theater festivals, between literature festivals, between spoken fest, between
Yeah.
Lollapalooza, between all of this, right? Because it's about bringing people together.
Mhm.
It's about getting people away from their device. Like, it's a very strange thing. So I play cricket about once or twice a week, right? And at first, I found it very refreshing and I loved it, even though I was getting dog tired and I'm a very unfit human being. But I loved it and whatever. And at first, I thought I'm only doing this because this is it's a sport and we like doing it. I also realized it means that for 4 hours in an evening, I'm not looking at my phone
Mm.
because I can't. I'm on a ground, I'm on a field, you know,
Sure.
all of this. And I suddenly find that very refreshing.
Mm.
Um, because it's the first thing we do when we turn in bed, at night.
Mm.
It's there. It's there. Like, I had stopped wearing a watch because you know there was no need, and whatever. And then I've gone back to wearing a watch because when I'm in rehearsal, if I needed to check the time and I went to my phone, everyone on stage who was in the rehearsal, suddenly in their head they're going, hey, shit, do I have a message? Do I have something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Their head is gone. But I'm only doing it to check the time.
Time.
Also,
Yeah.
I'll get distracted. I check the time. I see one WhatsApp has come. Oh, it's from a producer. I should check it because in case it's urgent. If I
Yeah.
had never
Yeah.
not looked at it, none of those thoughts would have come.
Yeah.
So where I'm uh, coming at with is, I think these experiences where we are drawing people away from their devices, away
Mm.
from that, and trying to be together. We may
Yeah.
call it Instagrammable opportunities. That's a different
Yes.
thing, right? That's just you merging the two worlds. So you have an experience and you want to share it with other people. But I think that more and more festivals are about that, and I think there will be a greater uptick in that. I mean, really simple example is between 2022, we were the first kind of arts festival to come out of the lockdown, so people were still a bit reticent to come and gather,
Mm.
right? And our attendance by 2023 is almost double of what it was in 2022. So it tells you that people do want to come, engage, meet, see, talk, all of
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah,
Okay, so you're seeing that. And actually, what you said is, when we've been researching this book, there's a lot of talk about anti sort of screen events, sport. Sport is
yeah,
going to become a big career of the future because, they're saying people are going to now start encouraging stuff that intentionally takes you away from your
yeah.
screen. And those are sort of, contrary to what you think, but new careers of the future, which are sort of the antithesis of this whole digitization. So
So
think
so I don't think I think it's very hard nowadays to live without. the digital world, like you cannot exist functionally, right?
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a digital phobe, but I will say that WhatsApp is my lifeline. I can
Yeah.
buy vegetables on WhatsApp. I can do,
Yeah.
all my, I don't really like talking on the phone. So I love the fact that I can type out stuff and, stuff gets done. It really does help. And most of the time it's a bot I'm talking to who's then feeding it in. So it's very hard, I think, now for any of us to not live in that digital world.
Mm.
But I think there is the counter movement to say, how do we uh, contend with the digital world? How do we offer experiences and interactions that don't make us fully kind of ensconced in that? Where is the humanity in that? And I think festivals are a large part of that. I think the theater is a huge part of that because it's one of the few places we can go and really listen to a live person speak and be a community witnessing, you know.
Okay, so you're big on community, big on live events, and you run the literature festival now. What are you seeing in terms of reading trends? Are you seeing people, continue reading physical books in the future? Kindle,
So,
virtual reality, are you going to read a book on your new glasses? What's going to happen? What do you think?
so I think, I mean, it is a weird, strange thing. I think one of the things that the online marketplace and the Kindle marketplace has done is it's prevented browsing,
Hmm.
right? It's prevented discovery. So you have to hear something or want something and go into a place and you get that specific thing. The bookshop as a location was the place where you went.
To browse.
So you went, I may have gone in to try and find a Salman Rushdie book, but because I'm there, I look at something else. Usually I'll come out with 20 books, but it's because I've discovered so many other things and read the blurbs of that. So that element of now discovering other things, right, um, is not quite there in the same way. Having said that, bookshops like Kitab Khana, like Landmark, not Landmark, like Tidal Waves, um, like for example, Bombay now has more bookshops than we did maybe
Yeah, even the
10
airport
years
one,
ago.
I know it's a little commercial, but like
Yeah.
it's always buzzing. Every
But
time you pass through that
so
TTL.
I think there is something to be said. Uh, I mean, also what the digital world has done is it has made us all readers,
Mhm.
right? The actual number of words consumed through reading, whether they're a news article, whether they're a Facebook post, whatever it is,
Has gone
has
up.
gone up. So
Mhm.
the act of reading actually
Mhm.
has gone in,
Mhm.
and now books are becoming these little portals that we can go into now. Whether you're reading that on a Kindle, whether you're reading that on a book, whatever is happening. I definitely think virtual reality will happen. Audiobooks have become huge,
Mhm.
right? Because you can get on a train and you could be listening to an audiobook as you travel into, from Andheri to town.
Okay, so you're saying the medium might change, medium might evolve, but storytelling, literature, that is
Yeah,
going
so
to remain.
I think that will remain.
Hmm.
I think we're all interested in other people's stories, right? And we all like to open up a world of imagination. While there is a lovely place for cinema where we get to be taken into someone's house,
Hmm.
there is a lovely world of theater where we get to be shown two cubes and we get to imagine someone's house.
Sure.
And then there's the lovely world of a book where someone describes it. So when Jerry Pinto describes the little apartment in Mahim,
Sure. Yeah.
in each of our heads, it looks slightly different. You know,
Correct.
the size of the shape of the fridge is like, and that's fine, and that's wonderful.
Hmm.
And I think we all like that. In fact,
And
that's
and of
why
course, then you got the podcast, right, which also then take you
there's
to
a whole
someone
other,
else's
yeah,
thing. That's a whole other
yeah.
genre. Okay,
And
great. Sorry, go for it.
no, I'm saying in that respect, when we actually see it dramatized or we see a book on screen and all, we're often quite disappointed because we're like,
Hmm.
I mean, like recently, right? Bonnie Garmus' Lessons in Chemistry, lovely book, great fun, easy read, all of that. But a key character in that book is that bloody dog, and the imagination of the dog,
Right.
you know. And you don't get that in the web series. You don't
Hmm.
get that anywhere else. I remember reading the short story version of Jaws 2, right? Where there you actually go into the shark's mind and
Hmm.
the fact that the shark's babies are hungry, which is why it goes hunting, and you have this whole arc that is not this monster, you know, kind of thing. And when I saw Jaws 2, the film, I was like, they missed out a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's what you said, right? It goes back to your whole, divide between this juxtaposition of art versus commercialization. I think everything sort of hinges on that. You need a Harry Potter book. Now you can watch the Broadway, split into
Yeah.
God knows how many. I think they have like 3 different,
Yeah.
you have to watch it in 3 parts, 3 hours each. So imagine a 12-year-old watching 6 hours
Yeah.
of this Broadway, complete immersion of experiences. Then they have the ride, the Harry Potter ride at Disneyland or whatever. So now you
Yeah.
can experience a ride. And now they started these Harry Potter experience zones where you can walk into a Harry Potter world or whatever. So, it's
Yeah, I mean, it is that whole
taking the book to, as
yeah,
you were saying, experiencing the book now in some form, and
in
that's sort
another,
of
yeah.
in another word. Okay, let's go to the last section of this and we'll start winding down. Since the book is about what the future entails and then a little bit about how to be future ready. So for someone wanting to enter the performing arts, what would you suggest they do? What sort of skills do you think they should be building on? I know you said stay away from AI.
No,
That's a critical lesson. It might actually work in their favor to just stay away from it for
Well,
a little while.
So I think one of the things is, so the one thing that you need, any performing art or like any martial art, like any sport, needs is discipline, right?
Okay.
That's an overriding thing. So even when you're engaging with the AI, you need to have the discipline that it doesn't become something you're dependent on, right? Because where does the individual end and where does, where are you only a jockey, really, and you're not actually creating of your own. So within what the future holds, I definitely think, particularly within the theater arts and within the performers, and this goes for whether you're a commercial performer or a non-commercial performer. Um, the amazing thing about actors and great actors is the fact that they can give us a human insight that we maybe knew but didn't really understand, and can articulate it in another character, right? So the study of human beings is still very, very important, right? In a weird way, I was talking to someone and I said, actually, theater is just our medium. We're actually all anthropologists, right? When we pick up a book or a play about, you know, the Rwandan refugee crisis, we're studying another culture. And we're trying to understand their things, and then we're trying to present it to an audience sitting in Bombay, and that's the act of anthropology, where we're presenting our research, but we're just doing it in the form of a play. And I think that is something that's very, very important. That study of human beings, the study, and also to constantly have life experiences. Because if you are representing other characters or other people, you need to have experiences to represent. So, for example, I wouldn't say stay away from AI completely, because the newer characters that we are going to be representing are people who are heavily dependent on AI, because that's where the world is headed. So if I don't understand that, I will never be able to present that holistically and honestly, right? And this goes also for the writers and also for the actors and the director, right? So, but to be disciplined, to not become, something that doesn't have that slight one step back to analyze. And that's an interesting thing. So to constantly look at human experiences and maybe seek them out more now, because earlier on that was all we had, right? When I was growing up, that's all we had. We had cinema, which would change once a week. There'd be one new film. If you were lucky, we had very bad television, which nobody really watched. We had no radio to speak of, or at least no radio that talked to us. And then all of that slightly changed and changed and changed. But so most of it was all about gathering together and gathering together and gathering. Now it's the opposite. You actually building silos, away. Look at us, you and I in a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we both live in Bombay.
When we both live in Bombay, we could be doing this over a cup of coffee.
Correct.
But convenience, but the way. So this is now the world, and this is how it is. So it's not to detach yourself completely from that, not to be a hermit, but at the same time understand but actively seek out human experience.
Yeah, we live in joint families now.
Yeah.
People live in nuclear families. Most of Bandra
Yeah.
lives alone.
Yeah.
So that's a big
And
shift.
all of that.
Okay, so I love it. So human experiences, seek them out, try to live them, be perceptive, observe a lot of human behavior.
And the other thing is, I will say, and I come back to the discipline aspect of it, particularly for someone looking for a life in the arts. So either play a sport, learn a martial art, learn a classical dance or classical or an instrument or something that requires rigor.
That inculcates rigor and discipline.
That rigor, right? Because currently where we are at is there is no bread line. For example, nobody has to wait for anything, right? Everything is delivered to your door in 20 minutes. You don't like this, you can do that, right? This is the world that we are growing up in. Unfortunately or fortunately, with the arts or with sport or with whatever, the work you're putting in when you're an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever you're doing at that time pays off when your muscles develop when you're 20, when you're, whatever. So that sense of the work is now and the payoff is later, that discipline is also a theater discipline. It is also a performing arts discipline. So even if you're not, I would recommend people doing any of these things. It will really hold you in good stead because the world is not there. The world is in a different place. The world is all about instant. You look at the kind of job attrition that's happening, right? People don't like their job for 1 month, they switch.
Yeah.
And there are other opportunities and other things to do. And I completely get it. Right.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, I'm just saying that's the reality that we are in.
So the discipline will become your competitive advantage, so to
Yes.
speak.
So your discipline becomes, and then also that this is a tough week, but it will make me better for later.
But you will stick with that tough week,
Yeah.
and not just quit. Or you'll watch that, finish that book or watch that series or whatever, because you get bored. You're watching something and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna pause.
Yeah.
Like Netflix is throwing out so many options, I'm just gonna watch something else. Yeah. Okay, I love it. I love that description. I think it's a very critical skill. This is interview number 50 and no one has talked about discipline. So this is a very, very, very cool skill. And I think what you said and how you explained it was very, very helpful. Last question and we'll close this.
Sure.
Any careers of the future that you see coming through that don't exist, and any careers you see getting annihilated, just that won't exist? It can be performing arts or anything, whatever you feel like.
So I genuinely feel that more labor-intensive things are going to go. Right. So I think that anything, I mean, we've always been saying this, that robotics and this and that will eventually make the labor force redundant. And I think that is something that is likely to happen even more now. Because now even the predictiveness of what happens is ahead of the curve. I mean, we all know an army full of engineers are unemployed, right? Like if suddenly that those skills are not required in a particular way. And I think that those kind of things will go, and even within the theater, your set builders will no longer be required as they have been. There'll be smarter ways to engineer stuff and things to happen, which an AI can probably do because it's all about calculations, right? Or how, like from a set builder point of view. So it's interesting, right? The 3D printing stuff that happened it originally was built as an architectural tool to build models, right? Because you could feed in the algorithm and you could say, okay, this wall is going to be curved. So what angle does each brick need to be made, right? And then that's how it would print that, and then you therefore get your shapes in order for it to have tensile strength, etc. And now all that can be that those calculations are so much more automated, and you can say, hey, I wanted to collapse in a particular way. Where do the joints go? And a machine will also make the joints and do all of that. I think that's where it's going.
And they'll move them around also. So you don't need those backstage people doing all that.
Yeah. So I mean, the moving them around, I'm still.
You still like the backstage guys?
Well, yeah, because again, it's a weird thing, right? We're a human experience, right? Like for example, I'm in the theater not for the shows. I'm in theater for rehearsal. I enjoy being in rehearsal and enjoy a group of us 10, 15 of us trying to solve a problem that a play proposes, right? But that's me, and but and I'm heavily dependent on my backstage team, and the fact that my backstage team is a human thinking thing, you know. But coming back to that, I do believe that a lot of things will change. This is within the theater, and I think also outside. Um, I think the stuff that is the jobs that are going to happen more in the future, I think are a little bit on, or rather, I can't say I think, I hope are more in what we've been talking about, which create more human interaction. So I think that the jobs of the newer areas of jobs of the future, I don't know what they're going to be, but they are going to be more about creating human experiences and bringing people together. Because I think that is something that at the end of the day, what are we vying for? We're vying for perhaps the time that people are not working. We're all vying for the leisure time, right? And currently, the AI and the algorithms with your infinite scrolls and your Facebook posts and whatever are winning. They are occupying most of that. So I think there is the opportunities. How do you win that back? Also, given that with more automation, more things happen, even like we're saying, if ChatGPT takes over all the writing,
we'll have more free time also.
You suddenly have less, your work day is less.
Yeah.
But then what are you doing with your non-work?
Correct.
You know, are we all just going to be Winston in 1984 that, just sit and have nothing? Or are we actually going to actively do something and ensure that we are bright and intelligent, and also then moving in ways that then take the race forward, right? And make the world hopefully a slightly better place.
Okay, great. It almost sounds like the future is going to sort of take us back to the past, right? Like what you're talking about is
it might
people play cricket on the roads, and that used to be a thing, you get around, play board games, like this human experience that's become this new term is basically how we lived our lives.
I mean, the other night we decided to play a game of cards, and I must be maybe 2 or 3 years after we haven't done it. And I cannot tell you how much fun it was. 6, 8 of us were sitting and playing, and it was like, my God, why don't we do this more often?
Yeah, but the new, like, I have a 11-year-old nephew, and we just came back from a trip. Everything we did was only via a screen. I said, let's play some games, and he had all these games on his iPad, and he said, sure, let's play games. But we were doing word games on his screen, and he's so hooked to his screen. Like that's his that's his first love. He doesn't know how to use pen, and like they're all on their screens. So they're living in a very different world.
It is incredible. I mean, there is something about, I mean, when the television came out, right? Like we were all, I was part of that generation of the 90s kids who basically was glued to a TV. And everyone went, oh, it's making you dull, it's making you this, it's making you that. And the computer came out, and for a while we were all glued to computer games. Because the screen is attractive, right? It's brighter than anything else in the room. So even if I'm not trying to look at you, I will look at you eventually, because you are right now brighter than anything else in my room. And then once that happens, we're stuck.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see how the future unfolds. But this was an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much.
I loved all your thoughts. I loved your insights, and all this. You're just genuine. I just love the way you spoke. It all comes from this space of just being. It was very natural, and I love the authenticity in this conversation. So thank you for keeping it so natural. I know you're a theater personality, but this conversation was very authentic. So either you're just really good actor, or you just
no, I'm not an actor at all. Personally, I'm not an actor. I'm a director and a writer, but I don't act at all.
Oh, you're an actor. Okay, great. Because this conversation is very genuine. I love how you just basically spoke your mind. So thank you for sharing a little slice of your mind today with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.